What's up, viewers? I'm Karen.
I think you'll find I'm Karen. This is Andrew.
That's right. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Karen.
And in this video, we're going to do a roundup of our 2024. It's been a very, very active, that's not the right word, it's been a very, very busy year.
We've had a very full year.
With a lot of change. There's a lot to go through, so we're going to whiz through it and give you a feel for what happened with our lives in 2024. What was all that about? It's a bit too much. Need to calm down with those graphics. Let's start with January.
So January we decided we'd put the house on the market.
Well, let's go back a little bit. Where were we in January?
We were in the UK.
Cold, grey, miserable. I know it's like that all of the year, but January was no exception.
We're not going to take you back to 2023 when the decisions were made. We're going to start off January 2024. This was when we put the house on the market, and that all happened very quickly.
Absolutely. I was on a skiing trip, and while I was away, the photographers came in, photographed the house. As soon as I got back off the trip, that was it. It was live on the market.
In fact, the day that you got back, we had to go out of the house whilst we had the first viewing.
And at this time, the housing market, as it still is now, was very slow, very, very slow. So we weren't sure how quick it was going to sell.
We thought we were giving ourselves plenty of time in case it didn't sell. The house sold straight away.
The first people that came in made an offer on the house. There was a little bit of negotiation and we agreed a deal. They were cash buyers as well, so they didn't have a chain, they didn't have anything to sell, which meant that it was a much quicker process. In the UK, when you're selling a house, you can have a whole army of people in the chain, buying, selling. And these things, and all it takes is for one person in the chain to pull out and the whole thing collapses. So luckily, absolute luck for us was there was us, the sellers, and the buyers, and that was relatively straightforward. So that was about it for January. Nothing much else happened. So let's go on to February.
So after we got over the fact that the house had sold so quickly, the panic set in for me. We had a whole house full of stuff and we definitely weren't taking it with us. That's where somebody had to go to the tip.
Lots of tip runs. In the UK, you can just go to your local tip. It doesn't matter what you're taking, it's free. We've recently discovered that it's not the same here. You can't just go to the tip and take your stuff that you don't need. You've got to pay. Lots of stuff for sale on Facebook Marketplace, and we just hit it hard, sell as much as possible. We had already started the selling process. So by the time we got to March, we'd sold a lot of the small stuff that we weren't planning to take with us, and it was onto the big stuff, things like sofas, beds.
So we got rid of lots of the bigger items in the house, things that we knew that we weren't going to take, tables and chairs, they just weren't going to travel well.
The whole sale process was going through. It takes a bit of time, even with no chain. So by the time we got to April,
this is when all the big expensive items started to move.
Starting with my car, which I was sad to see go. Not everybody likes them, but I had a Tesla Model Y and I loved it. It was a great car. I know everybody hates EVs, but you know, it's still your car. It's still your daily driver, and to get rid of it, I was sad to see it go. I didn't want to sell it, but you can't take it with you.
So this was also the point that the caravan went.
And if you didn't know, we used to do a little bit of YouTube for the caravanning in the UK. I'll put a link in the description. There's a link to our UK channel where we did a bit of caravanning.
During the rest of this month, we got to sign the paperwork with the solicitors for the house.
To get ready for the house to complete.
So this was the month that we had to find an Airbnb. So we found an Airbnb house in Towcester that we could move into once the sale of our house had gone through.
It was closer to the school, so they could walk to school, given that we'd already sold one car at this point and we planned to sell the next car soon.
So the last thing that we did was we booked the removals company, and we used a company called... I tell you what, we shouldn't even say what they were called, because I have to say I was quite disappointed with the service that we got from them. They're really popular. One of the two companies that people tend to use when moving to Australia. It also wasn't the same company that we booked with that actually took our items.
Yeah, get this. The company that we booked with never actually touched our stuff. They subcontracted the collection from our house. It then got subcontracted to another company to do the international shipping part of it. Obviously subcontracted to somebody in Australia to do the Australian part of it.
Yeah, you're right. We shouldn't give them any credit.
So yeah, even though it'd be great to say such a company is terrible, don't use them, that still is advertising for them. So
we're going to do this.
Yeah. Did you stick your middle finger up then?
I did not stick my middle finger up. I was keeping quiet.
I could just see the corner of your finger, and I thought you were... What are we on to now? May?
Let's go to May.
So by this point, we'd already told all our close friends and family that we were leaving the country. So there was just the outer circle of friends that we hadn't told. So it was a case of telling them at this point.
Sorry if you only
Yeah.
found out on Facebook and are watching this.
Yeah. In May, we also went to visit family. Our family live in the northern part of England and we were in the south. So in the early part of May, we exchanged contracts. That means that the sale was legally binding and it was definitely going to happen. The only way that it wouldn't happen is if the buyers pull out, and then of course there's a huge financial penalty. So what that enabled us to do as soon as we'd exchanged contracts was book flights.
That was the exciting bit.
That was the exciting bit. I mean, we could have booked flights beforehand. You never know. These house sales can fall through. We don't want to book flights and then, for whatever reason, have to cancel them. Right up until this point, we were flying with Qantas. Do you remember?
I do remember.
We were watching it on
Jet TV.
Big Jet TV. We were watching them take off from London to Heathrow, and at this point, there was no other option. Surely it was always going to be
100%,
Qantas.
yeah.
And then we started to look at prices, and whoa, what a difference! So we looked at different options. We looked at whether or not we should hub through Dubai, Hong Kong, Singapore, or Perth. So directly to Perth and then over to Melbourne. Eventually went for Singapore Airlines, and the price was about half of the Qantas.
It was unbelievable.
It was massive difference. And I'm sure when we looked earlier in the year that it wasn't such a big differential. Yeah, at the point that we went to book, maybe because it was quite late in the day and supply and demand, who knows. The next step, house removals. We got it down to just the bare minimum of things that we were taking with us, and they turned up to pack us up. So the next step is the house completed. The sale went through, handed over the keys and moved into the Airbnb that we'd booked. And we booked that for how long?
8 weeks, I think. Although if you remember, we did have to move out partway through because it was already booked.
We did. So the location of the Airbnb is in a town called Towcester, and Towcester is the nearest town outside of Silverstone. So of course, for the Grand Prix weekend, they can charge more than 4 times what we were paying there. So they said you can either pay that or you can move out. So we went on holiday for a few days for a long weekend and then back to the Airbnb. So June was a bit of a quiet month, not a lot happened. Coincidentally, our next door neighbours in the house that we just sold were also emigrating to Australia. They're moving to Perth and they left in June.
June was also the month that Max decided to get chickenpox, but it turns out that's quite a good thing because in Australia they're vaccinated.
They wanted either a vaccination or proof that you've had it. I don't know how that works. Would you show them pictures of the spots or something?
I did take some.
Just in case. So into July. Our furniture collected in mid-May-ish.
Towards the end of May.
Third week of May. Went back to the warehouse of the company that wasn't even the company we booked with and didn't move. You know how we know? We put air tags and we could see that it didn't move. It didn't move for about a month. So shortly after the furniture arriving in Southampton, it then got loaded onto a boat and started moving. Finally.
By the end of July, it was passing Cape Verde.
And we still had the second car, the Land Rover, which we sold. That was it. We were officially carless in July. We were relying on Ubers, hired a car for a couple of days. And then towards the end of July, we had to move out of the Airbnb and into a friend's house. Luckily, a friend was going on holiday and they offered us their house for 10 days.
We just had to look after a cat.
Yeah, we had to babysit a cat.
Everybody loved looking after the cats.
Yeah. On to August. This was the exciting month. This is when things really started to happen. So of course, before any big trip, you have to have your holiday haircut. So everybody got a holiday haircut ready for the plane. And for us, it was like a holiday. We were going to the airport. The only difference was
it was just a one-way ticket.
Ticket was one way.
But don't forget, there was a little bit of pain at this point. Do you remember all that packing and repacking of the suitcases? Yeah,
it was a bit of a problem. So obviously, as you know, when you're flying, you've got a strict weight limit. Luckily for us with Singapore Airlines, that weight was spread across all 5 of us, so we could maximise our weight with that. The problem is, we really did maximise the weight and we weighed everything. We ditched some stuff, we put some more stuff into hand luggage, but we ended up with 10 kilo backpacks for the kids.
Yeah.
Which is...
That may have been a mistake at that point, but we were up to the limit, so every single suitcase that we took had its maximum limit. Hand luggage all had its maximum limit. Bearing in mind that we used household scales and still got to the maximum limit. No surprise when we got to the airport.
Yeah, there was a slight issue. We were overweight.
Our scales are just not the same
Our
quality
calibrated
as airport.
bathroom scales were not of the same standard that they use in airports. And so we had to unpack at the desk, take some stuff out, put it in hand luggage, which is crazy really, because it's all going on the plane. So why does it have to come out with the suitcase? And
But in some ways we were quite lucky because they weighed the suitcases and they were over, but the hand luggage would have also been over if they'd weighed it, but they didn't weigh the hand luggage.
No, they weren't interested. So those 10 kilo kids' backpacks were now 12 kilo.
That was a long walk through the airport with those bags.
Yeah, so that was it. Us getting on a plane, we decided to have a layover of 5 days in Singapore just to make the most of, we're flying into Singapore. Are we going to get to go again anytime soon? Probably not. So let's have a holiday as well while we're there. And that was great. That was an amazing place. It was hot.
It was very, very hot. Do you not think, though, for anyone that is also thinking of making the same trip that we did, we didn't seem to get attacked by, what's the word?
Mosquitoes?
Jet lag.
Jet lag. I don't think it attacks you. I think you suffer from it. I don't think it's like, you know.
Well, I didn't get attacked and I didn't suffer from it.
That was careful planning. The flight that we took, there's 4 flights going out of Heathrow to Singapore every day. And we chose the one, the research that I'd done, that would give us the least amount of jet lag. And it seemed to work. And we planned at what point we would try and sleep on the plane. Not military planned.
And make the plane trip go quicker as well.
Yeah, and I think the plan worked really well. We had a little bit of sleep on the plane. When we arrived in Singapore, we were still tired, but awake enough to be able to stay up until 10, 11 o'clock at night, and then by which point you're ready to sleep again. And then we all slept pretty much that first night in Singapore straight through. So that worked really well. Visited quite a few places in Singapore.
No.
Forest Garden.
Gardens by the Bay.
Gardens by the Bay, that's the fella. And we went on the big boat hotel.
We went to Universal
Studios.
That was a very hot day. It did make it quite difficult.
A lot of queues. I don't queue very well. So after 5 days in Singapore, get back to the airport, back on another plane. This is a daytime flight, and arrive in Melbourne.
To start our new life.
So we decided to have the first night in the city, booked a hotel. We booked this wonderful hotel. Actually, I had enough beds in the room for all of us, for the whole family. And it looked really fancy. Yeah, we got there and it wasn't so fancy. I think maybe 30 years ago when they decorated it and made it look all fancy and photographed it. They haven't touched it since. It was a bit grotty, wasn't it?
And it was in a dodgy area of the city.
Well, it was right.
We now know.
It was right next to the train station, and as you know, train stations can attract a certain type of person late at night. We got to have a look around Melbourne CBD, around the city, a little bit the next day before we got in another taxi and moved to our second Airbnb, this time an Airbnb in Mornington.
Which was a completely different area to be in. Really nice and quiet by the sea.
And then the last things to complete in August were we needed a car. We needed to get around. We booked a hire car for a week, and that was a Mitsubishi Outlander. We went to the dealers to have a look at a Nissan X-Trail, and actually then we went to Mitsubishi and ended up buying a Mitsubishi Outlander. We liked the hire car so much. So after 4 weeks of the Airbnb in Mornington, we moved into our rental property. And if you want to see about our rental property and our rental struggles, then watch a video. It'll be up here or up here somewhere, and I'll put a link in the description.
So this month we've registered all 3 children for school, and the boys both start.
So we've moved into the rental property. It's empty. We've got nothing. Furniture has just arrived, or our removals have just arrived in Melbourne.
I think the container arrived in Melbourne, but obviously still needed to go through all of its checks.
Customs clearance and all that kind of stuff. But we needed some furniture immediately, so that was lots of trips to IKEA and
shopping time,
lots of money spent. It was painful. And the good guys getting a TV and fridge, vacuum cleaner,
all the essentials. We did some research, then we went and did some haggling.
We did some serious haggling at the good guys.
There's deals to be had out there.
So in October, our furniture finally arrives. It was a bit damaged. You can claim for it, but the claim process it's wrong. It's so long-winded, and it's done on purpose, I think, to discourage you from making a claim.
So with the boys already being at school, Lucy now starts school this month, which was the beginning of the last term of Australian school. And at this point, this allowed me then and Andrew to both start applying for jobs. Applying for jobs can be quite painful, quite time-consuming, and there were so many people applying for the same jobs that we were applying for. Finally, we did get lucky, and I got an interview. I started work at the end of October.
So November was a little bit of a strange month. Normally in the UK, we would have been well on our way to thinking and planning for Christmas. Here, the weather was getting warmer. We were going to the beach quite a lot. I didn't even think about Christmas, and it really caught up with us very quickly.
Yeah.
Where we needed to pull our socks up and get on with planning for Christmas. So we're starting to get organised.
We opted for a plastic tree this year.
Yeah.
Stop those spiders coming in.
Yeah, I'm not so worried about the spiders. It's more about whether a real tree will survive in a warm climate. In the UK, it's fine because it's cold and miserable.
It's true.
Then again, you've got the heating on the house, so
They do still sell them.
maybe next year we'll have a real tree.
We've got a nice tree though.
It's very plastic, but it'll last for a long time.
So in December,
So we took a trip into the city to see the Christmas decorations, to see how festive Melbourne looks during the Christmas build-up. It was okay.
I was a little bit disappointed with the Maya Christmas window. It was made out to be this amazing Christmas window, so I kind of was expecting it to be a bit like New York's.
Yeah, Macy's.
Macy's, yes. So I was expecting Maya to be a little bit like Macy's. It was a nice Christmas window, but it wasn't very festive and Christmassy. It was more about
Australia
Zoo and the Owens.
Big queues though, it was very popular. And then on Fed Square they had some Christmas tree decorations and some other things there. Problem is, because it doesn't get dark until late, nothing's lit up, so you can't really get the full effect of it. By the time it does go dark and it's lit up, it's too late for the kids then, really.
And then there's Christmas.
And then there's Christmas. So we're fairly organised by this point, ready for Christmas. Christmas Day was successful. The weather was perfect. The big fella found us, you know. Max was worried about that. And we decided on Christmas Day that we would go to the beach, have some lunch at the beach. But then what happened? Unfortunately, somebody had an incident on the beach, paddleboard related incident. Somebody isn't safe to be let out of the house, and somebody should stay away from anything that involves any kind of danger. That'd be you.
Is that me?
Yeah. Dismounting a paddleboard in shallow water
Is a no-no.
is something, you know, you got to learn these things. And when I say dismounting, I mean falling off. Yeah.
Elegantly falling off.
There was nothing elegant about it. So a ankle, foot injury later, a visit to the emergency doctor, not the hospital, the walk-in centre, what do you call it? Urgent care.
There was no walking about it.
There was no walking about it. And then a visit for an x-ray, and then to go back to the urgent care to find that the x-ray was inconclusive, and to go back for a CT scan, and then have to wait a few days because, of course, doctors and our GP. There was no appointments at this time of year, as you'd expect. Not everybody's working. So eventually we got back to the doctor to find that at least the good news is no bones are broken, soft tissue damage.
The good news is that means I don't have to have 6 weeks off work.
That is good news.
That is a definite bonus.
The downside is that I'm stuck with the kids for all this time.
It's been a busy 2024.
There's been a lot of changes in 2024 for us. It's been a big adventure just getting to this point here. I think 2025 is going to be more settled, maybe, more integration. We're getting into routines already. Let's see what the future brings. Hopefully I can find some work, or plan B and starting a business gets underway and hopefully is successful. We'll see what happens, but we'll keep you posted. So that just leaves us to say thanks for watching. Hope you've had a great 2024, and I hope 2025 brings you everything that you could ever dream of.
Thanks for watching.
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year.